My son-in-law walked into that dining room on Sunday morning thinking he had already won. He had no idea I had been waiting for him since 5 o'clock. Let me back up. My daughter Fiona has always been the kind of person who sees the best in everyone. Her mother was the same way. I used to call it a gift back when my wife was still alive. After Carol passed, I watched Fiona carry that same openness through grief, through university, through every setback that came her way. And I thought, yes, that is Carol's greatest gift to this world. Still walking around, still smiling at strangers. I am 63 years old. I retired early from 31 years with the city of Ottawa, managing infrastructure contracts. I know how to read people. I know how to read documents. I know when a number does not add up, and I know when a man is telling you what he thinks you want to hear rather than the truth. It took me about 40 minutes with my daughter's boyfriend, the first time she brought him home for Thanksgiving, to understand that something about him was not right. His name was Brett. Brett Calloway. He was 34, good-looking in the way that men who know they are good-looking tend to carry themselves. Always half a second slower to stand up when someone enters a room. Always letting someone else reach for the bill first before he made his move. He had what he called a consulting business, which, as far as I could understand after 3 years of asking careful questions, appeared to consist mainly of Brett explaining to small business owners why they needed Brett. Fiona thought he was brilliant. She thought he was driven. She was 31. She had her own career as a physiotherapist in Canada. She owned her condo. She did not need anyone to take care of her financially. That made it worse, in a way, because it meant Brett was not after Fiona's money. He was after mine. I own a property in the Gatineau Hills that Carol and I bought in 1998 for what would now seem like an impossible price. I have savings. I have a pension. I have a lake house that Fiona grew up spending summers at, and I have made no secret of the fact that one day all of it goes to her. Brett figured this out, I believe, within the first 6 months of dating my daughter. What I did not know, not yet, was just how clearly he had mapped it all out. Fiona told me in October that Brett had proposed. She was glowing when she said it. She showed me the ring. It was a good ring, I'll say that. He had done his research on what would impress me. I hugged my daughter and I told her I was happy for her, and I was, in the part of me that just loves her and wants her to be loved. But there was the other part of me, the part that spent 3 decades reading contracts and spotting the clause that would cost the city $2 million if we were not careful. And that part of me went very quiet and very alert. The wedding was set for the second Saturday in June. They had booked a venue in Almonte, one of those restored heritage halls that costs what a reasonable person might put toward a down payment. I was helping pay for it. Brett's family contribution was a case of wine from his uncle in the Okanagan and a card that said, "Congrats, kids." I want to be honest here. I tried to like him. I truly did. For Fiona's sake, I had dinner with the man every few weeks for 3 years. I listened to his theories about the real estate market. I watched him refill his own glass before anyone else's. I noticed how he spoke about other people, always just slightly positioning himself above them. But I told myself, he makes her happy. That is what matters. I told myself that for a long time. The Saturday before the wedding was the rehearsal dinner. We had it at my house, because Fiona wanted something warm and personal, and because I have a back deck that looks out over the river, and in June that view is something that cannot be replicated by any rented venue. I cooked. I do that now. Carol was the cook, but after she died, 12 years ago, I taught myself because the alternative was eating frozen meals alone, and I refused to become that man. I made her roast chicken recipe. Fiona cried a little when she smelled it coming from the kitchen. That was the right kind of crying. There were maybe 20 people there. Brett's family, a few cousins, Fiona's friends, my brother Ted and his wife coming in from Kingston. It was a good evening. Brett was charming the way he could be when it mattered. I watched him work the room and I thought, all right, maybe I have been too hard on him. Maybe this is who he actually is. Maybe I have been carrying suspicion that was never fair to him. I went inside around 9 o'clock to get more ice from the chest freezer in the garage. My garage connects to the house through a short hallway, and off that hallway is a small room I use as a home office. The door to that room was not quite closed. I heard Brett's voice first. He was on his phone. I stopped moving before I had made a conscious decision to stop. The way you freeze when you hear something in a dark house. He was talking to someone, a friend by the sound of it, relaxed and low, the voice he used when he thought no one who mattered was listening. I will not repeat exactly what he said word for word, but I will tell you the shape of it. He was describing his plan, the lake house, the pension, the way and he used a specific word for me that I will not repeat here, had apparently made the numbers very easy to calculate. He told his friend he figured 3 years, maybe 4. Get established, get comfortable, let the old man bond with any kids they had, make himself indispensable. Then either the natural process of time would take care of things, or if necessary, a good family lawyer could help Fiona see that certain assets should be jointly held. He laughed at something his friend said. Then he said, "She has no idea. She still thinks I'm in love with her." I stood in that hallway for what felt like a long time. I could hear the party outside. I could hear Fiona laughing at something my brother Ted had said. That laugh of hers, high and sudden, like she never sees the funny part coming until it is already there. I did not go back in through the garage. I walked outside around the side of the house, stood at the corner of the deck, and I watched my daughter for a moment. She had Carol's way of standing, one hand around her own elbow when she was happy and relaxed, like she was gently holding the feeling in place. I went back in for the ice and I brought it out and I refilled the cooler, and I smiled and I talked to Ted's wife about her garden for 20 minutes, and I did not say a single word to anyone about what I had heard. The wedding was in 7 days. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen until about 2 in the morning with a cup of coffee I did not drink, and I thought about what I was going to do. The obvious answer seemed clear. Call it off. Tell Fiona. Play her the recording if she didn't believe me. Because yes, I had gone back inside before the last guest left, and I had taken my phone out of my jacket pocket, and I had held it near the slightly open office door for 4 more minutes while Brett finished his call. Not the whole conversation, but enough. I had been standing there long enough to know that his friend was asking questions and Brett was answering them, and I got it on audio, his voice, his specific words, clear enough. But here is what stopped me from simply telling her right away. Fiona has a quality that I love and that, in this moment, made everything more complicated. She does not believe things about people she loves until she is absolutely certain. It is the same quality that made her the last one to let go when her mother was sick, the one, still hoping, when the doctors had stopped using words like hope. It is the quality that makes her the physiotherapist she is, the one her patients trust completely, because she never gives up on them. If I had played her that recording on the Saturday night of the rehearsal dinner after 3 years and an engagement and a dress already hanging in her childhood bedroom, she might have believed me. But she also might have found a way to explain it. Brett under pressure. Brett showing off for his friend. Brett saying things he didn't mean because men sometimes say stupid things on stag nights, or to impress other men. I could see every door she might walk through to get away from what that recording meant, because I know my daughter, and I know how hard she would fight to protect something she believed in. I needed her to hear it herself, not from me, from him. This is the part that cost me the most. This is the part I still turn over sometimes, late at night, wondering if I made the right call. Because what I decided to do meant letting my daughter get closer to a man I now knew with certainty did not love her for 7 more days. It meant watching her try on her dress on the Wednesday with her 2 closest friends, knowing what I knew. It meant sitting across from Brett at breakfast on the Friday morning when he stayed over so we could all drive to Almonte together, passing him the coffee pot. Asking him if he'd slept all right. I told one person, my brother Ted. I called him Sunday morning early before anyone else was up. I told him what I'd heard. I told him my plan. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Gerald would have done the same thing. That was our father's name. He meant it as the highest thing he could say. Here is what I did. I called Fiona on the Monday and asked if she would come for lunch, just the two of us. I made soup. I sat her down and I told her that I had something I needed to show her, and I told her she should listen to the whole thing before she said anything. I played her the recording. She listened. She did not move while it was playing. When it was finished, she asked me to play it again, and I did. She sat with her hands in her lap. She did not cry. She stared at the table. After a while, she said, How long have you been watching him? I said, I have always watched him. That's my job. She was quiet again. Then she asked me if I thought she was stupid. I told her that the most decent people are always the most vulnerable to this kind of thing, because they cannot imagine doing it themselves, so they do not think to look for it. I told her that her mother had the same quality. I told her it was not a flaw. She asked me what I thought she should do. I told her that was her decision entirely. I told her I would back her up in whatever she chose. But I also told her what I thought because she asked. I said, let him come to Sunday breakfast. Fiona is, I should mention, not only kind. She is also, when she needs to be, very precise. She got that from me. When she was 14, she once dismantled an argument I made about her curfew so methodically that I sat there with nothing left to say. When she has decided something, she does not waver. She nodded slowly when I explained what I had in mind. She said, I want to be there. I said, I wouldn't have it any other way. The wedding, on the surface, proceeded. Invitations were not canceled. The venue was not notified. We let the week pass the way the week was going to pass, because Fiona decided she needed a few days to absorb it, and because we both understood that what was going to happen next needed to happen cleanly, without drama, in a setting that was controlled. Sunday morning, my house. Fiona had asked Brett if they could have a quiet family breakfast before the week of final preparations got chaotic. He had agreed easily. He came in at 9:30, kissed my daughter on the cheek, shook my hand, said my kitchen smelled amazing. Back bacon, the good sourdough bread from the bakery on Richmond Road. We sat down. We ate. I let the conversation run for a few minutes. Ordinary talk, weather, traffic on the 417. Brett was relaxed. He had no reason not to be. Then I put my fork down. I said, I've been thinking about the lake house. Brett looked up. I watched his eyes move the way eyes do when something unexpected enters a conversation, and the brain needs a second to calibrate. I said, I've been thinking about what should happen to it, down the line. I thought maybe the three of us should talk about it. He nodded. He said that sounded like a good idea. He said it carefully. The way a man tries to sound casual about something he is not casual about. I said, I actually want to put it in trust, specifically for Fiona and any children she has, structured so it remains in her name alone. I've already spoken to my lawyer about it. Brett put his coffee cup down. I watched him. I have spent 30 years watching people in meetings receive information they were not expecting. He said, well, that was something to think about. He said there were a lot of ways to structure something like that. He said he actually had some thoughts on the property management side of things. I said, that's fine, but I want to be clear that the structure I've chosen protects Fiona's individual interest regardless of her marital situation. He said, that seems a little. And then Fiona, who had been very quiet, set her own fork down. She said, Brett, I need you to listen to something. She had the recording on her phone. She had trimmed it herself, the relevant portion, 91 seconds. She placed the phone on the table between them and pressed play. I watched his face during those 91 seconds. He went through several things in sequence. First there was the shock of hearing his own voice. Then the attempt to read the room, to understand how much we knew and how long we had known it. Then a visible internal calculation, and I could almost see him deciding whether to go with denial or explanation. He chose explanation. He said it wasn't what it sounded like. He said he had been drinking. He had been venting to a friend. He sometimes said things he didn't mean because his friend brought out this stupid competitive side in him. He said he loved Fiona. He said that was real. Fiona looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "The wedding is canceled. I'll be in touch through my lawyer about returning the ring. Please don't contact me for any reason other than that." She said it the way you read a prepared statement, which I learned later she had. She had written it out on Tuesday and memorized it. My daughter. Brett looked at me. I think he was expecting me to be the soft point in the room, the father who might be swayed by a son-in-law's appeal, the older man who might want to preserve the peace. I have seen that look in a lot of men who had made an incorrect assessment. I said, "You heard her. I'll drive you to the bus stop." He did not take me up on the bus stop. He left on his own. The kitchen was very quiet for a moment. Fiona looked at the sourdough bread. She picked up her fork. She said, "Are the eggs still warm?" I said they were. She ate. I ate. Outside the window, the river was doing what the river does in June, high and fast and completely indifferent to the events of any individual Sunday morning. After a while, she said, "I keep thinking about how he said she has no idea, like I was someone he had managed." I said, "He thought he understood you. He was wrong." She was quiet. Then she said, "How did you know? What made you stop in the hallway?" I thought about that for a moment. I said, "I didn't know. I heard his voice and something told me to stop. Your grandmother used to call it the instinct that protects you from yourself. The one that says, wait, even when you don't know what you're waiting for." She nodded. She asked about the lake house, whether I had actually spoken to a lawyer about the trust structure. I said I had, actually. That part was true. I had made the call on Thursday. It seemed like a sensible thing to do regardless of how Sunday morning went. She almost smiled. She said, "You were pretty confident about how this was going to go." I said, "I was confident about you. That's different." The following weeks were not easy. Canceling a wedding 6 days before it happens involves a particular kind of phone call, many of them made with a composure that costs something each time. Fiona made most of those calls herself. She told people only what she chose to tell them, which was simply that the engagement had ended and the wedding would not be taking place. She thanked the venue, the caterer, her bridesmaids. She handled all of it with a clarity that made me simultaneously proud and heartbroken in the particular way that watching your child carry a hard thing with dignity will do. My brother Ted drove up from Kingston the following weekend. We sat on the back deck in the evening, and he brought a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving for something, and he said this seemed like the right occasion, and I said I supposed it did. We drank it slowly and watched the river, and he asked how Fiona was doing, and I said she was doing the thing she always does, which is figure out what the next day needs and do it. He said, "She sounds like Carol." I said, "She is." I do not know what happened to Brett after that Sunday. I have not asked, and Fiona has not said. I understand there was some back and forth through lawyers about the ring, which was resolved, and that he moved away from the Ottawa area sometime in the fall. I hope he is somewhere far from anyone my daughter knows. Fiona, last month, started seeing someone she met through a colleague at the clinic. I have not met him yet. She has mentioned his name a few times, small mentions, the way you test a word to see how it sounds. I am not in a hurry, neither is she. We have both learned, I think, that patience is not passivity. It is the decision to wait until you know what you are looking at. She came for dinner on the Thursday 2 weeks ago. I made the roast chicken again. We ate on the back deck because the evenings are long now and the river was low and the light was the color it gets in late summer, that particular gold that does not last. She was quiet for most of the meal, in the comfortable way, And then she said, "Do you remember what you told me? About the instinct that protects you from yourself?" I said I did. She said, "I've been thinking about that. I think I had it too, the whole time. I think I always knew something was off, I just didn't want to listen to it." I said, "That's the thing about that instinct. It doesn't shout. You have to be willing to go quiet enough to hear it." She looked out at the river for a while. Then she said, "Thank you for stopping in that hallway." I said, "Thank you for trusting what I brought you." She reached over and squeezed my hand once, the way her mother used to, quick and certain, and then she let go and we finished our dinner. The river caught the last of the light and held it for a moment, the way rivers do, and then it moved on.